how are you talking about yourself? What are you saying? People in the creative space have the limiting belief that I must suffer to be successful, or art must be painful. Your own worst enemy is staring at you in the mirror. And that's a problem. There's nothing wrong with celebrating your achievement. There's nothing wrong with being happy with yourself and boasting a little bit about yourself. The thing is, though, if you're stuck in these traps or these loops, you'll never get enough training. There'll never be enough training. There'll never be enough success. And that's why the idea of perfection is a myth.
I am trying to normalize what I call being human. And that means having emotions. And sometimes be a little bit politically incorrect.
I don't know if politically correct is always the best way to go. Sometimes I feel like when people overly try to be politically correct, it's inauthentic. We bleed the same blood. Why are you better than I am just because maybe you studied at an Ivy League school and I didn't? Or you might have wrote these books and I didn't, or published in a journal. That's great. Number one, that doesn't make you better than everybody else.
It doesn't really matter whether the people think or say, because it's about the value that you yourself give to that creation of yours. It doesn't matter at the end of the day.
It doesn't matter. And there was a quote that I've heard several times. It's none of your business what people think.
Exactly.
You do it, because if you try too hard at anything, it goes. And just like when people try too hard to please other people, it comes across as needy and it's turn off. And that's why I call myself a recovering people pleaser.
It's very interesting because when you actually stop caring so much about other people, then it's almost like the opposite happens. You focus on yourself and then actually people start coming to you.
Because that's what really, we should love what we're doing.
Right. Set yourself for success, not for failure.
Your network, who you surround yourself with, should be supporting and elevating, and should also be positive achievers, because that'll rub off on you. There's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So looking at failure as feedback.
Self-doubt doesn't have to run the show. You can rise above the script and you can become unstoppable.
Welcome to Rosabel Unscripted, the podcast where authenticity meets real life stories. I'm your host, Rosabel Soulfill, and in each episode, I dive into unscripted conversations about personal growth, life challenges, and the experiences that shaped us. From heart-to-heart chats with inspiring guests to raw moments of self-discovery, I am here to share stories that connect us all. Whether you're seeking motivation, healing, or simply a dose of real talk, you are in the right place. So get comfortable, tune in, and join me on this journey of transformation, empowerment, and meaningful conversations. This is Rosabel Unscripted.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Rosabel Unscripted. This is the place where real conversation meet real life, where we explore resiliency, transformation, and the courage to live fully unscripted. So today's guest is someone who truly embodies that spirit, and his name is Albert Bramante. Albert, you are a talent agent, psychology professor, hypnosis, and NLP expert. You're also the author of Rise Above the Script. And for over 20 years, you've been in the crossroad of entertainment and education, helping performers and land life-changing roles, guiding students to step into their power, teaching people everywhere how to rewire themselves from doubt into confidence, right? You are also the CEO of Bramante Artists, and you do represent actors working across Broadway, film, and TV, not just booking roles, but building long-term careers with purpose. Albert, why don't I let you tell us your story?
Sure. Well, first, I want to appreciate and say my thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And so you kind of summarized it very nicely. So I don't know if I can top that. So I started out as someone who was going to major in psychology, and always had an interest in the brain and science and all of that. And I was an avid reader my entire life. I still am. So being a bookworm was sort of like my specialty. And it's that. So I did a while. I did things for a bit. I studied during my undergrad. I did my major in psychology, but I also was interested in the arts at some level. So like in high school, I was in drama club. In college, it was involved in some theater organizations and clubs, as well as I took some acting classes as electives. And I really enjoyed it. And so moving forward, I found myself right when I received my master's degree, working in New York City through certain connections, I kind of was working, hitting the ground running. What was 9/11, doing a lot of crisis intervention and counseling and grief work. I started working with actors again, not necessarily coaching them or consulting with them. And I kind of brought back my interest in acting because I took some classes and I was involved in high school and drama club. I decided that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to start working as an actor. So that's how I started. And most people who work with agents kind of start out as actors themselves. I did that for about 2 years. And for me, I had a great experience. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I loved working with actors. So at the end of the day, it was more about how can I support actors? And so first I was like, I can do some counseling and do some support group. But then I was like, no, I actually like connecting them. I'm a people connector by nature. And I think because of that, it kind of led me down the line and saying, hey, let me be an agent and let me connect people together. And so that's how that started. In 2004, I started my first agency, my first company, which is at the time called Emerging Talent LLC. And I was also, since 2003, starting to teach part-time as a college instructor. And I did that for many years. And I still do that now. Now I'm part-time. When I was going for my PhD, for my dissertation, which is kind of like what some people call a thesis, we had to really struggle and tackle a real-world problem. And for me, that real-world problem was, why are these actors self-sabotage? And I noticed a high degree of self-sabotage was happening. Actors weren't showing up for work. They weren't showing up for appointments. And a whole host of things were happening. And I couldn't really the reason why. You have these really talented actors that aren't really living their potential. So that was my dissertation on self-defeating behavior in performing art. And when I completed it, everyone was telling me it was groundbreaking. I should publish it. And it took me several years to do that. And that's what kind of turned into my book in 2024 that was released, Rise Above the Script. So that's how that happened. I love teaching. I think it's in my blood. My mom was a teacher. My father and my older brother were coaches at one point, like football and hockey coaches. So I think the coaching and the teaching aspect, I was kind of raised around, and that's what led me to this line of doing the line of work I do today.
Wow, that's such an amazing story. I can relate to you because I'm also the daughter of 2 teachers. So I know what it's like. It's a great responsibility. I don't know about you, but my mom was always doing something related, notes or whatever. So it was like I was seeing her do that. And I was like, I got to have a book myself. Learning is a big, big thing at home. Wow. And so but you're also interested in hypnosis and NLP. And you talk about the power of self-talk and rewriting all those limited narratives. Can you share how you help people recognize when they are like stuck, let's say, in an old script?
Mm-hmm. Well, the one thing is important, as you just mentioned, is self-talk. How are you talking about yourself and referring to yourself? And I'm not just talking about the communication you do interpersonal, like other people, but also to yourself. What are you saying? And so some of the scripts that we might have, especially we're actors, and I don't know where this came into, but somehow a lot of people in the creative space have the limiting belief that I must suffer to be successful, or art must be painful. And I'm not sure where that came from. So the one thing I would kind of say is like the language. And a lot of times actors will say, I'm broke, I'm out of work, I'm struggling, I'm starving. And that's a bad frame to start off with. That's a negative frame. And very often our brains and nervous system is really going based upon the language we're using. And this is where like I to study NLP, how language shapes the world we're in. So if I walk in a situation and I say, I'm struggling, my brain, neurology, nervous system, whatever you refer to as, is going to find reasons to confirm what I'm saying. So if I'm walking around with the notion that I'm struggling or that I'm starving, I'm going to be searching out opportunities and searching for feedback that's going to confirm that belief. On the other hand, if I come out and say I'm surviving and I'm thriving and I'm strong, I'm going to have opposite experiences because now things are going to confirm to that, reality is going to confirm to that viewpoint. One of the things you can look at is if someone has like a victim mentality, which is, why is this always against? Why can't I do anything? The industry stinks. Everything is bad. And that's where I start to see, okay, there may be a problem here. You might be getting in your own way. It's just what I would say is worst case, your own worst enemy is sometimes staring at you in the mirror.
Right.
Your own worst enemy is staring at you in the mirror. And that's a problem for some people. That can be an issue. So what do we do about that? Well, again, a lot of it has to do with self-love. It has to do with sometimes changing our programming. Because a lot of times our internal voice, our inner critic, is formed from our parents, from our upbringing, from our early teachers, and any traumas that we experience. And in this kind of space, when we talk about trauma, it doesn't have to be a sensational event or something catastrophic. It could be a day in a life trauma. Your parents may have favored your brother or sister over you, or you found you had to compete a lot for your mom or your dad's attention. That can be a trauma over time. Or maybe you had some teachers that ridiculed you. And all of that can add up over time. So it's like these little, what I call micros, can sometimes add up to become significant. And then we start responding as if we've been traumatized or experienced a trauma. And so going back to that internal voice and the critic, we start internalizing maybe the viewpoints that we hear from our parents, or even our parents talking negatively to each other or about themselves can even be internalized to where we start to believe that we're not maybe that good enough, or that we don't really deserve success, and don't brag because we're sometimes told that. Let's get don't be selfish, don't brag. And which is misguided advice, because there's nothing wrong with celebrating your achievements. There's nothing wrong with being happy yourself and boasting a little bit about yourself. Now, of course, there's a balance between being arrogant and being confident, but being confident can mean like, hey, take credit for a job that you did a job well done. But the main thing is just really watch, again, the language that you use, both to yourself and to other people. And if you notice that there's cycles where things just keep happening as a pattern, then it's time to take a change. And that might mean going to a therapist, or even just doing some self-reflective work.
Absolutely. And then there is also imposter syndrome as well. Where do you see that it affects the most?
Well, imposter syndrome really affects our confidence in a sense. And it affects sometimes it can cause us to not take action enough, be more of a reactionary state rather than an action state. So very often textbook definition is like feeling like a fraud. So for example, you might feel like, oh, why would I want to create content? No one's going to want to listen to what I have to say. Or no one's going to take my acting career seriously. Who am I? And that starts to what causes imposter syndrome. Now, I believe that all of us have some sort of imposter syndrome that pops up over time. And it can sometimes be a tool for help, like a beneficial thing, because it keeps us humble, keeps us grounded, and keeps us on a path to always be learning. But it can also hold us back from reaching our truest potential. And so therefore, you start to fall to the procrastination trap or the perfectionism trap, where I just need this extra training or this extra course, and then I'm going to do what I'm saying I'm going to do. Or I just need more experience, wanting more experience and wanting more training. The thing is, though, if you're stuck in these traps or these loops, you'll never get enough training. There'll never be enough training. There'll never be enough success. And that's why the idea of perfection is a myth, that if we want to look at, the perfect start is a lot.
Right. And let me ask you this. The title of your book, Rise Above the Script, is that correct?
Yes.
Was it dedicated to actors, per se? Something that you may call mental health without the mask?
Yes. It was, I use a script metaphor. I have recoverers set on the stage. I did that for the metaphor for actors because it's performance arts oriented. However, there's a lot of value packed in there that is good for anybody, not just for actors. So anybody who's struggling to put themselves out there, could be a coach, an entrepreneur, a speaker, a sales, or an educator that maybe struggling to kind of like put themselves out there or to get started in a sense. And so rising above the script, and again, I'm not talking like a physical script an actor would read. Again, I use that as a metaphor, but the script internally that you use in your mind. So
let me ask you this real quick. I want to get your opinion on something because it occurred to me. Would it be fair to say that life in general is a big act?
If you think about it, we're all playing different characters. Right now, I'm a podcast guest, you're a podcast host, but you're also playing the role of a daughter, a granddaughter, partner, spouse. You're playing these different roles. Now, yes, you're still true to yourself, but you're putting on different roles. And so who knows? I mean, there was one, I was near one podcast. It was kind of at a metaphysical bent to this. And one of the guests was saying, wouldn't it be funny if after we pass away and go beyond that we don't see a film crew or a stage director directing everything, what we're going through? I'm like, that would make sense because I feel like somehow I encountered both a tragedy and a sitcom writer in my life sometimes.
Kind of like that movie with Jim Carrey. I can't remember what the name is.
The Truman Effect, yeah. The Truman Show, yeah, the Truman Show. But yeah, I mean, that's going a little esoteric, but I'm thinking that, well, you could argue that. And that's why I feel like the book can apply to everybody because we're performing something. Like, even if you're not an actor, you're still performing on some level.
Yeah.
Even as a teacher, you're performing. As a coach, you're performing. And that's where that falls in.
I think you mentioned prior off camera that you have worked closely with performers that often you would see them smiling on stage while battling private struggles. But if you think about it, in my case, for example, I'm a professional also. I'm a nurse practitioner. I work alongside with doctors and we have to put up a front. To be honest with you, there's a lot of times we might be grieving inside. We might be even grieving for our own patients, but we still have to look professional, look a certain way. And not to say just us, but in general, that's what I said. Would it be fair? Life is a big act because a lot of times we have to go on with life despite of what might be going on behind the curtains. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's true because that's why it's like that, the whole phenomenon of laughing outside, crying on the inside. And that's why sometimes you'll hear cases of suicide or even people who've attempted suicide. You often hear like fans in the family saying, but they seem so happy. Right. But what you were seeing was what they chose to show.
No, I don't know if by now you probably get the idea behind my podcast and why I actually call it unscripted. Because me personally, I am trying to normalize what I call being human. And that means having emotions. And sometimes be a little bit politically incorrect or however. But to cry if you need to cry, to feel human, to certain times, just allow yourself to be you, to be okay, to have feelings. And even when you think you're not at the right time, the right moment, it's just like to be unscripted, to allow some freedom. Let's put it that way. The freedom that unfortunately society, we are put in boxes, like you say, in different character modes. So we're kind of like, sometimes, I don't know, feeling like we have a leash maybe a little bit and someone, like you say, is directing and like mastering puppeteers and stuff of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, and I definitely am big on respectful, but again, me personally, I don't know if politically correct is always the best way to go.
Right.
Sometimes I feel like when people try to be politically correct, it's inauthentic. And sometimes I feel like the politically correct way of sometimes saying things is just as bad as the non-political way of saying it.
But it's about achieving a balance, because what I've seen is the opposite. People are trying to be so correct that they're somehow losing themselves in the process. I've noticed that.
And it's true because, well, that's in the area of being politically correct, but it's just trying to conform to other people's expectations or other people's will and reality, because then we become more authentic. Now, the people around us may not be able to pinpoint exactly what's going on, but that's why you start to get the vibes. So like when you have an interaction with someone and you say, something's off about that person. I don't know what it is, but something is off, because there's a good chance that that person is not being authentic. And that's why you start to get the vibes. So like when you have an interaction with someone and you say, something's off about that person. I don't know what it is, but something is off, because there's a good chance that that person is not being authentic. Because there's a good chance that that person is not being authentic. they may still have great intentions and still be a good person overall, but somehow the energy that they're giving off because they're inauthentic comes to their energy field of something, this isn't right. Something's not right. And that's where I strongly believe about how we can sense things intuitively. And I'm not talking about woo stuff. I'm just saying just intuitively, we can determine if somebody's not confident and being inauthentic.
And it can also, it's also cultural stuff. I talk about that because in my case, for example, I was born in Colombia, South America, total different world than here. And I love what I do now. For me, this is a safe space because I can feel that I can be me here talking and just having these conversations. Sometimes I've been in areas and moments here that I don't feel I can be myself because, again, the vibe that the other people are given, depending on the moments or the circumstances. So it is good. I think it is a good thing for us to find those spaces, to find the people, to find your tribe. That's what I call.
100%. And for me, like my tribe is more of a performing arts people, like in creative sites. Now, when I was going, when I was going for MBA, I went to a couple like academic conferences or academic organizations. And I'll be honest with you, while I could hold my own in the conversation there and have some great chats and hear some great talks at these conferences in society, I felt so out of place there because everybody there was very stuffy, snooty. And it was like, okay, I'm going to try to outdo. It was like watching people. It was almost laughable to watch these people like outdo each other.
Yes, they're not very genuine. Have been on those places.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there going like, I don't belong here. And I know I should. I'm going to be a PhD. I should. But I don't belong here. And they even had students over the years would tell me that I'm not like other professors. I'm like, thank you. I definitely believe in, obviously, teaching and theory, but I also believe in being myself.
Yes.
And I'm not snooty. I don't feel I don't fit in these categories. I don't fit in the categories.
I have a book that I wrote and there's a chapter and the chapter is called Belonging, Not Fitting. I believe in belonging, the whole fitting thing. And for me personally, with him limits, I find myself being the disruptor. When I find myself on those groups, I'm the one, I'm going to speak my mind. I'm going to say, and it's interesting to see the people like their eyes go like this, like, oh my God, it's interesting.
And sometimes what you might even find is that there's a few people in that group that might be like, I like what she's saying.
And some people follow you and they feel like, oh, you could see that release. They're like, oh, I can talk to it. It's like, yeah, you can talk. Don't be afraid.
Don't be
They don't bite.
And they're not, and it's sort of like sometimes I'm like, okay, we bleed the same blood. Why are you better than I am just because maybe you studied at an Ivy League school and I didn't? Or you might have wrote these books and I didn't, or published in a journal. That's great. Number one, that doesn't make you better than everybody else. We're human beings at the end.
I think what happens is we forget that each one of us have something special. We all have something to bring to the table. And when we start believing that the person out there, they have it all together and it also starts with us. When we believe in what we do, it doesn't matter how little, how small, then we know this is our baby. This is what we have here to offer. We believe we have pride in it. So everybody knowing their limitations and whatnot. And I believe in that, but some people are a little bit afraid because, again, unfortunately, you also have those personalities that can seem intimidating. So
100%, absolutely. And I think that people just sit back and they don't do what they have stuff in them. I'm like, because one of the things I even encourage in my classes, I'm like, everyone should be participating because you never know, have an insight that really impresses everybody. Or you might ask it. Like I always ask, is there any questions? And I'll say, please, somebody ask something because there's a good chance that when you ask that question, 5 others of you are thinking, I wanted to ask that too. The important thing is to kind of take action because not just speaking up but that's just using our talents because we only have this life. And one of the things that I'm going to bring in a little bit of research, but a lot of psychologists need to be people out on their deathbed. And the biggest thing in these conversations, the biggest source of regret wasn't like, oh, I did this business venture or I made this mistake. It was the missed opportunity, the things they didn't do. Maybe they didn't do it out of fear, or maybe they didn't feel they were capable enough. And so life passed them by and they didn't get to do what they wanted to do. And so the cautionary tale here is, look, just go for it. Do something. Write that book. Because a lot of people, I'll hear people say like, oh, I really want to write this book, but no one's going to read it, or I don't have the time. I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that anymore, because you should write that book. For
Exactly.
me, and I'm calling myself out on this too, because since 2017, I kept telling people I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. And I was speaking from the rooftops because I had a doctoral dissertation done. I was hearing a statistic that only 1% of people who say they want to write a book actually do. I'm like, okay, now I'm wake up call, because I was easily coming at 99%. And I was dealing again with the imposter syndrome, which, well, nobody's going to read that book. It's just me. I mean, another fear that a lot of fear is like is perceived failure. Well, for me, it was like, what if I write this book and I get 500 1 or 2 star reviews on Amazon? What am I going to do? And for one thing, one of the things that kind of helped me get over that was knowing, I looked at a lot, like even the books that were like on the New York Times bestseller list have a whole share of reviews. So if they're on the New York Times bestseller list and they have negative reviews, go for it. And number 2, this is one of my mentors that told me that sometimes a negative review can sell your book even more, because now people want to know more, are curious about it. So that kind of helped me, and just knowing that, I was following that statistic. So I just did it. And my perfectionism was sometimes kicking in there, because one of the things I would do is I would sit and either have the Word doc or the Google Doc open. I put a couple paragraphs in, and then I would read it back and say, this is dumb, and delete it. And by the end of the evening, by a 2 or 3 hour sprint, I had nothing done. So a trick that I heard from another writer, prolific writer, who would encourage me to just write first and then edit later. So do like a brain dump and write everything out, and then go back and edit it. And so that's what I did, and it made a world of a difference. But I'm glad I took the action, because now I can add published author to my identity. And
absolutely.
Otherwise I would have been sitting here in 2025 telling people, I'm writing I think I'm going to write a book.
I was writing my book since I was age 16, and I was like, I'm going to write a book. And so last year, I think it's when I'm like, you know what? I gotta put this book together. And I finally did it. And one of the things that me personally have learned is like, listen, it doesn't matter. I mean, people are always going to criticize. They're going to say something, whether it's good, positive, negative. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether the people think or say, because it's about the value that you yourself give to that creation of yours. It doesn't matter at the end of the day.
It doesn't matter. And there was a quote that I've heard several times. I don't remember the exact author of this quote, but it was like, it's none of your business what people think of you or of your product. People are just going to be somewhat, you're going to have raving fans, and you're going to have people that are not going to be your cup of tea. And you're not going to be their cup of tea either. So that's okay. The important thing is keep going and keep, because I had a lot of compliments of people who said the book really helped them. And now if I didn't write the book,
because eventually somebody's going to like what you do. Right. Eventually it's going to reach somebody.
It's going to reach one person. And that's
so,
all you need.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I create. Sometimes people, I just do what I like. You put your passion, your love into it. Of course, you make sure that everything is, but if you worry first about the people going to like it, that shouldn't be the main thing that moves you, because then that could rob your creativity, let's put it that way, or the joy of doing something. A joy that people will see, but if you're all stressed out because you're trying to meet deadlines, then all that is going to be reflected in the final product.
Of course, do it, because if you try too hard at anything, and just like when people try too hard to please other people, It comes across as needy and it's a turnoff. And that's why I call myself a recovering people pleaser. So when I was in my teens and 20s, that's all I was doing, pleasing. I realized A, that I don't need to do that. B, it doesn't work. It's not going to get the intended effect that you want it to.
And there is such a thing as recover from it.
Oh, I'm living proof of that. And a lot of people I talk to are, because we have this kind of notion that our day has to revolve around whether people are going to accept us or not. And that's not true. It's actually quite liberating when you don't go by that anymore.
It's very interesting because when you actually stop caring so much about other people, then it's almost like the opposite happens. You focus on yourself and then actually people start coming to you. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, absolutely. Because you're not trying. There's no stakes into it. The same thing with actors. We can translate this even to actors when you're auditioning. Some of the best actors, the ones that are working actors, that you may not know them by their name, but you know them by their face because you watch a lot of TV. A lot of them have one thing in common is like their approach to auditioning. They're not there to win the people over. They're there to perform. And when they walk into that room or they put themselves on tape to do that 90-second to 2-minute audition, they're performing. They're not focusing on whether or not to get the audience to like them or not. They're there to perform. And when you're that genuine, because there's no pretext there. I'm not concerned about whether you're going to like me or not. That's out of the window. The concern now is, let me do what I need to do. And you're going to be much more successful in that way. And that's with anything. Even for the most successful salespeople, I remember hearing this one talk from this person who makes 6 and 7 figures. He goes in every sales situation with the mentality, I don't need your sale. I need my product. Like, my product is going to help you. But at the end of the day, if you don't buy from me, I'm not going to be offended or bothered. And I think that's so liberating when you can approach that. You're like, okay.
The way I like to think, if you don't like it, somebody else will. And that's it. Life goes on.
Life goes on, exactly. And you'll be fine. You'll get up the same morning the next day.
You'll get up and do another one. It's again.
Do the same thing. Absolutely.
Let me ask you this. What do you think so many creative professionals wrestle with, again, burned out and hidden pain?
Well, I think they're related, hidden pain and burnout. Now, a lot of times burnout could happen for a host of reasons. Number one, it could just be too much, like spreading yourself too thin, doing too much with no rest, no physical rest in there. That is definitely a sign of burnout. Also, the emotional side of things. Now, being an actor is it can be a very fulfilling thing, but it's also, especially if you're an actor in the metropolitan area like New York, where I'm based at it, or LA, or if you're in Hollywood, it's so much competition. It's overly saturated and unpredictable. And the unpredictable is like the main theme in the business. So a lot of times that toll of wanting to put yourself out there and then being vulnerable and then, sorry, you didn't get the job. And then over time, I think that can happen. So you're dealing with instability in the job. And then you have well-intentioned family and friends that are talking in your ear. You come from a family that's not creative or that's not in the arts, that doesn't understand the business. And I know they have good intentions, but it's like they come back and they'll say, well, you've been doing it for 6 months. Do you think it's time to get a real job or pack that in? And so you hear these messages and they're from people you care about and you love. And it starts to wear down on you in certain aspects. That can be a cause of burnout. So a combination of both. Doing too much and then not getting the recognition that you need. And you just become exasperated. And then it can come up in different ways. And you stop taking care of yourself. You start neglecting yourself. You start not sleeping well. And it just cascades from there. Because I've noticed, especially as an agent, and I would meet these actors a lot of times that were just graduating. And they were like 21, 22. They graduated, they're excited, they see the bright lights on Broadway or the Hollywood sign and they get really excited. And that's great. But then reality hits in, okay? This isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And so they get burned out. And about 10 years ago, I went to a musical theater showcase for a university in New York. And there was 16 seniors that were performing. They were graduating. They were showcasing agents and managers. I wound up signing to my agency one of those graduates. And couple of years after that, we met up for coffee, and I just casually asked her in the conversation, how's everybody doing? Yeah, how are your classmates doing? And she told me that, because she said there's 16 in our class, 14 of them left the business. Like completely after 2 years just quit, went out to get like a job and gave up their acting dreams. It was just her and somebody else that was just still pursuing it. And just graduated a year later. And they're all talking about quitting. And it really boggles my mind, because that is a form of self-sabotage, because you spent money and how much time to get your degree and not going to use it. But it does take a real toll if you don't have the system in place to manage your time and manage your expectations in your state, emotional and physical state. That is needed. So in order to come out burnout, you really need those systems in place. So it would be kind of like helping you with your mood, helping you manage your emotion, but then also at the same time, helping you manage the day-to-day things in your business or organization, depending on what field you're in, so that you can be excited, because that's what really, we should love what we're doing.
Right. Set yourself for success, not for failure. And you said something very important, that is managing expectations. We have to, again, have that balance to know that sometimes the whole discipline, the whole knowing, like sometimes, I know you mentioned that we shouldn't think that we don't have to think, okay, things got to be hard in order to be good, or the opposite. But also sometimes before things get better, sometimes you got to go to the lows, but you have to know how to come out of that and don't give up the first time that something goes wrong. And that's when reality is like, you love what you do. This is what you chose. You will do this even when things are going hard, because you believe in your own capacity, to deliver. So things are not always as well as, but having those expectations.
Yeah, and exactly. It's about having reasonable expectations, but also at the same time, having a support system and support network. And
that is important.
And then managing yourself is important, because it may feel in the beginning that you're invincible, but you're not. And that's the one thing that, it's not that I'm saying that everybody's weak, but we're not invincible either.
Right. Yes. And then having the right support, that's also important.
Because one of the things in my book, I do have like certain chapters and sections that are like helpful suggestions. And one of the things I talk about is your network, who you surround yourself with, should be supporting and elevating you, and should also be positive achievers, because that'll rub off on you. On the other hand, what will also rub off on you is if you're around negativity all the time and you have people just constantly moaning and complaining about different situations in their life, it's going to rub on you. And then you're going to start moaning and complaining too. So it's like we are the sum of our company that we keep.
Right. Absolutely. I also like that you seem to blend psychology with the new AI. Is that what I understand? Artificial intelligence?
On some level, I like to see what's out there. I really like how AI can simplify things for us and help automate certain things, act like a second brain.
Right.
So I do think that there's ways that we can use this to really benefit society. Plus, I'm just impressed with all the medical breakthroughs that are coming through because of AI. But just like with everything, we have to blend responsible usage of that and ethical usage of that. One of the things I'm seeing problematic with AI is people turning it for companionship. Like people are turning to chatbots a lot of times for friendship or even relationships. That's not
like they're trying to replace. You cannot replace the human part of it, like we were mentioning earlier, the humanity. But you can definitely make it to. It could definitely be very helpful, like you say. All those menial tasks.
Brainstorming, it can be great for automating tasks or even augmenting or increasing stuff. Like write a message and I'll give the AI. Like ChatGPT or Claude, the context of what I want to say, and then my message, and then it'll turn around and tweak it, and then I'll come back and tweak it myself. Yeah. One person that I was listening to had said it may be referred to instead of artificial but it should be maybe augmented intelligence, meaning that it does something in addition to what we do. It doesn't become a replacement. It doesn't become a replacement. Like, I don't know how AI is going to be a therapist or how that can work, because it doesn't know how to read emotional expressions or facial expressions. And it's just going to go based on textual or whatever's been typed out there. So I do believe in responsible usage, but I do believe it can really help what we're doing. It can really help us cut down.
It's all about a balance. I like the idea of, as creatives, not being afraid of it and thinking, oh my God, it's going to take my job. Yeah. It might take certain jobs, but humanity, that is something that cannot be taken away. I don't care what they say.
At least from what I'm seeing now. I mean, who knows? What I'm seeing now is, I think there's two mistakes that we approach with AI. One is being afraid of it. If you're saying it's not going back to its year, we have to learn how to use it. And the other mistake is, I think, being 100% dependent on it.
Yes.
That's absolutely a mistake too. And actually, even the founder, Sam Altman of OpenAI, ChatGPT, said the same thing. It may use language that looks like it's coming from a real person, but it's not.
Again, it's all about balance. I think in time, it will show if we're capable of having that balance. And another thing I wanted to ask you is regarding your book, Rise Above the Script. If you could distill one core message of your book into one powerful takeaway, what would it be?
There's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So looking at failure as feedback. So you're not a failure just because you made a mistake. And when you adopt that mentality, failure is feedback, you're building resiliency. And that's been my core important thing that I feel is my mission, is help people become more resilient, more adaptable. So that's what I believe. There's no such failure, only feedback. And there's a concept called failing forward, meaning that even if you make a mistake, it's information and it's one step closer.
What is one thing that you hope people can feel when they finish reading your book?
That they're capable and that they are worthy enough to pursue what they want. We look at people like Einstein or Bill Gates or some of the other admirable people out there, which are great and they are icons, but there's millions of other people that can be that successful, but are not applying themselves like they should.
Right. Albert, is there anything I have not asked you that you're like, I really need to get that out there?
No, I think we covered everything that I feel is important.
That's pretty good. And how can people get in touch with you?
So you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn under Albert Bramante. You can also go to my website, albertbramante.com. Now, on my website, I have recordings available, like short meditations. They're on different topics, from leadership to sales to public speaking to addictions to sports performance. They're downloads that you can purchase inexpensively, and you get permanent access to it. You listen to it on your headset, your earbuds, and just take 15 minutes out of your day to do that. And if you do that on a daily basis, I guarantee you'll see some improvements in whatever it is you're seeking out to do. And so I highly encourage you to do that and reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
That's awesome. Albert, this has been such an enriching conversation. You're giving us tools. We talked a little bit about that inner critic, how to reframe our story, and also find the balance in that chaos, whether we're on stage, in classroom, or just showing up for our everyday lives. And so for those listening who want to connect, learn more about Albert's work, or grab a copy of his book, you can visit Albert's website at albertbramante.com. And you can also find on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Thank you so much for being so open and generous today. Really appreciate your story here. And to my listeners, remember, self-doubt doesn't have to run the show. You can rise above the script as well, and you can become unstoppable. Until next time, continue to live your life unscripted.
If this episode spoke to you, if it sparked a thought, a feeling, or a shift, I invite you to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss an episode. Visit www.rosabelzofel.com Here on Rosabel Unscripted, we dive deep into real stories, mindful moments, and conversations that matter. Every week, we explore themes like resilience, healing, transformation, and the courage to rewrite your own story. So if you're ready to grow, reflect, and walk this journey with an open heart, hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's keep the conversation going. There are new episodes every week.